Millionaire single dad sees Waitress teaching his nonverbal son to speak. What he does next changes. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's dive into today's story. In the quiet corner of a local coffee shop, tucked away from the bustle of the busy streets of New York City, Emma sat behind the counter, her apron dusted with flour, her hands busy preparing the next round of coffee orders. She had always been good at blending into the background. At 26, her life was nothing glamorous. She was a waitress, juggling long shifts and barely making enough to keep her small apartment in the city. Yet, there was something undeniably special about Emma. Despite her circumstances, she had an aura of warmth that made people feel at ease. It was the way she smiled at her customers, the way she took time to speak to everyone, especially the children who came in with their parents. And today, there was a special child at the cafe, little Noah, a nonverbal boy, who came in with his father every week. Noah had a calm demeanor, his big brown eyes taking in the world around him as he silently observed everything. His father, David, sat across from him, his face sharp and serious, his demeanor cold and distant. David was a man who rarely spoke, who seemed out of place in the vibrant coffee shop. He was dressed in a tailored suit, his dark hair perfectly styled, a stark contrast to the simplicity of the cafe. But there was something in his eyes that caught Emma's attention. She noticed how his eyes would linger on his son, almost as if he were trying to reach him but didn't know how. And today, as she served them their usual orders, something unusual happened. David, the reserved businessman who never said more than a few words, was watching Noah carefully, and Emma couldn't help but notice a slight change. As she walked by their table, she heard David whisper softly, almost as if he were trying to comfort his son, but the words were lost in the quiet of the cafe. Emma, without thinking, approached their table, her curiosity piqued. "Can I help you with anything today?" she asked gently. David looked up, his eyes meeting hers for the briefest moment, a silent recognition passing between them. He nodded and muttered a simple, "Thank you." But there was something more in that look, an unspoken question. "Noah seems like such a bright boy," Emma continued, unable to resist. "Have you thought about speech therapy? I know it might be a long road, but sometimes small steps can make a big difference." David hesitated. He looked down at his son, who was quietly eating his lunch, completely unaware of the conversation happening around him. For the first time in a long while, David's tough exterior cracked. His voice softened as he said, "I've been trying, but it feels like I'm doing it alone." Emma's heart ached for him, and she didn't know why she said it, but it felt right. "I could help," she offered, her voice steady despite the surprise even she felt at the words. David looked at her, surprised by the offer. He opened his mouth to speak, but stopped, as though unsure if he should trust her or not. But there was something about Emma, something in the way she genuinely cared for his son, that made David consider her offer. Maybe, just maybe, this was the help he had been looking for. And so, without saying much more, he nodded. "All right," he said softly. "If you think it might help, let's give it a try." And just like that, an unexpected bond was formed. A bond that would not only change the lives of Emma and Noah, but also David, a man who had long since stopped believing that kindness could exist outside his wealth. What began as a simple offer of help soon spiraled into something neither Emma nor David expected. And as their journey together unfolded, the walls they had both built around their hearts began to crumble. Little did they know that this simple act of kindness would lead them down a path that would alter their futures forever. As the days passed, Emma became a regular part of Noah and David's routine. Every Tuesday and Thursday afternoon, Emma would arrive at the coffee shop early, sit with Noah, and gently guide him through the basics of communication. She didn't have any formal training in speech therapy, but she had a natural way with children. She taught Noah simple signs, showing him how to express his needs and feelings without words. It was slow at first, but Noah's eyes lit up each time he learned something new. David watched from across the room, his heart swelling with a mixture of gratitude and guilt. He had never imagined that someone like Emma, with so little to give, would be so generous with her time and patience. And yet, every day she showed up, as if she truly believed in his son's ability to speak, to connect with the world. Emma's dedication began to show results. Slowly but surely, Noah started using the signs more frequently. It wasn't much, but it was a start. Emma would smile whenever she saw Noah respond to her cues, and David, though reserved, could not hide the pride he felt for his son. He had started to believe that maybe, just maybe, Noah could overcome the silence that had defined his life for so long. David's feelings for Emma grew more complicated. He had been trying so hard to keep his distance, to not get too attached. But the way she cared for his son, the way she understood the loneliness he felt, he couldn't deny it any longer. He was drawn to her in a way he hadn't been drawn to anyone in years. It terrified him. Emma, on the other hand, found herself growing more fond of David and Noah each day. There was something about David's quiet strength that appealed to her, something about the way he cared for Noah despite his own personal battles. Emma had always been a bit of an underdog herself, scraping by in the city, doing her best to make a life. She had never imagined that a man like David, someone so clearly out of her league, would even notice her, let alone allow her into his life in this way. But she couldn't deny the connection she felt with him. One afternoon, as she was helping Noah with a new set of signs, she noticed David watching them from the corner of the coffee shop. He looked at them with a gaze full of admiration, but also something deeper, something that Emma couldn't quite place. He was standing by the counter, his usual stern expression softened, his arms crossed in front of him. When their eyes met, David quickly looked away, but Emma could feel the weight of his gaze on her. It was in that moment that she realized how much she had come to care for him, despite her efforts to keep things professional. Emma finished with Noah and walked over to David, unsure of what she was about to say, but knowing that she couldn't ignore the tension between them any longer. David, she began softly, you know, you've been a great father to Noah. I can see how much you love him. David's eyes flickered with surprise, then something softer, almost vulnerable. Thank you, he said quietly. I try, but I don't always know if I'm doing the right thing. Emma smiled gently. You're doing better than most. Noah's lucky to have you. There was a brief silence, and for the first time, David took a small step closer to her, his usual guarded demeanor slipping away. He trailed off, not knowing how to finish the sentence. You don't have to explain, Emma said, shaking her head. I understand. I think I always have. The words seemed to hang in the air for a moment, as if the truth had been spoken and neither of them knew how to move forward. David cleared his throat and took a deep breath, as if gathering the courage to say what he had been thinking for days. Emma, he started, his voice low but steady. I don't know what's happening here, but I can't deny that I feel something. Something I haven't felt in a long time. Emma's heart skipped a beat. She had known it, felt it too, but hearing him say it aloud made it real. David, she paused, unsure of how to put her own feelings into words. I care about you. And about Noah. More than I thought I would. The admission was raw and honest, and it seemed to bridge the gap between them in a way nothing else had. David's eyes softened, and for the first time, Emma saw a flicker of hope in them, a hope that had been buried under years of pain and loss. But before they could say anything more, the door to the coffee shop opened, and a gust of cold air rushed in. David instinctively stepped closer to Emma, his protective instincts kicking in, as Noah stirred in his seat, looking up at them curiously. We should go, David said quickly, his voice a bit rough. I'll walk you home. Emma nodded, feeling her heart race as she stood up. I'd like that. As they stepped out into the cold New York evening, side by side, Emma couldn't help but wonder where this new connection between them would lead. She had started this journey with only the intention of helping Noah, but now, as she walked next to David, she realized she might be helping herself too. And maybe, just maybe, she wasn't the only one who was ready to break down the walls around her heart. The following week, things began to shift between Emma and David. What had started as simple sessions to help Noah communicate had gradually turned into something more. Emma found herself looking forward to the time she spent with Noah, watching as his small steps toward communication gave him confidence. She noticed that David, though still reserved, began opening up a little more each day. It was subtle. He'd smile at her more often, his hard exterior softening in her presence. And although he never said much, Emma could feel the unspoken gratitude in the quiet moments they shared. One day, as Emma and Noah sat in their usual corner of the coffee shop, working through another lesson, David walked in earlier than usual. His usual crisp suit was replaced by something more casual, a navy jacket and dark jeans. Emma noticed the change immediately, but before she could say anything, David approached them with a hesitant look. I've been thinking, he started, rubbing the back of his neck, clearly unsure of how to continue. I don't think I've properly thanked you for what you're doing for Noah. Emma smiled at him, but it was the sincerity in his voice that caught her attention. You don't have to thank me, David. It's my pleasure. I'm just happy to help. But David shook his head, stepping closer to the table. No, really. I'm not sure what you're doing, but it's working. Noah's starting to open up. He's using the signs more, and it's like he's starting to trust me again. Emma's heart swelled with warmth. He's a wonderful kid, David. You've been doing an amazing job with him, even if you don't always see it. David looked at her for a moment, and then, almost as if he couldn't hold it in any longer, he said, I've been so focused on my work, on being the CEO of the company, that I've neglected the one thing that truly matters, being a father. I've been distant with Noah, even though he needed me. And now, I feel like I'm finally starting to connect with him, thanks to you. Emma was taken aback. She had never heard David speak so openly, so vulnerably. She had always known he was a devoted father, but hearing him express it so honestly made her see a different side of him. David, you're doing better than you think, she said softly, her voice full of understanding. It's not easy, especially when you've been through so much. But you're here now, and that's what matters. For a brief moment, their eyes met, and Emma could feel the weight of his words sink in. It wasn't just gratitude, it was something deeper, something she hadn't allowed herself to fully acknowledge. She felt a connection to David, one that went beyond their shared time with Noah. The walls she had built around her own heart, walls that had kept her from opening up to anyone, seemed to be crumbling, piece by piece. Emma, David said, his voice a little softer now, I don't want to sound forward, but I'd like to spend more time with you. I don't know what it is about you, but I feel like you get me. And I think you've helped me understand myself a little more too. Emma's breath caught in her throat. She had known there was something between them, but hearing him say it aloud made it real. David, she started, but the words caught in her throat. She wasn't sure what to say. She had spent so much of her life keeping her distance from people, afraid of getting hurt. But here, in this moment, with David standing before her, she felt a pull she couldn't deny. It's okay, David said, almost as if reading her mind. I'm not asking for anything. I just wanted you to know. Emma smiled softly, feeling a warmth spread through her chest. I think I'd like that too, she said quietly. The conversation was interrupted by the sound of Noah's giggles. They both turned to see the little boy, who had just managed to make a new sign for Cookie, and was proudly showing it to Emma. David's eyes softened as he watched his son. He's so much like you, he said with a smile, a rare one that reached his eyes. Thank you for everything. As they left the coffee shop later that day, Emma couldn't help but feel a sense of anticipation. The relationship between her and David was evolving in ways she hadn't expected. There was still so much uncertainty, but for the first time in a long time, she felt a sense of hope. Hope that maybe, just maybe, something real was beginning to blossom between them. As they stepped into the cold evening air, David turned to her once more, his expression sincere. I know this is all new, and I don't want to rush anything, but I hope we can figure this out. Together. Emma nodded, her heart pounding in her chest. Together, she echoed, knowing that this was just the beginning of something neither of them had planned, but something that felt right all the same. As the weeks went by, Emma and David continued to find their own rhythm, both in their roles as Noah's caregivers and in their growing connection with one another. Emma's sessions with Noah were progressing, and it became clear that the bond between them was deepening. Noah, once a quiet and reserved child, began to show more signs of engagement, his eyes lighting up with excitement whenever Emma arrived for their lessons. He started using the signs more frequently, and even made an attempt at speaking his first word, a soft, barely audible mama, that brought tears to Emma's eyes. David, too, noticed the change in his son. He watched, amazed, as Noah made progress he never thought possible. He felt a sense of pride swelling in his chest. His son, who had been silent for so long, was finding his voice, and Emma had played a huge role in that. However, as the days passed, David found himself wrestling with a growing sense of uncertainty. He had never been one to let his guard down easily, and the feelings he was developing for Emma were beginning to overwhelm him. She had become such an important part of his life, yet he wasn't sure if he was ready to fully open his heart to her. After all, his life was complicated enough, and he didn't want to bring anyone into the chaos of his world. Yet, when he looked at Emma, he saw something different. She wasn't just a woman helping his son. She was a kind, strong person who understood him in a way no one else did. And Noah had come to love her in a way David hadn't expected. One evening, after their usual lesson with Noah, David found himself standing outside the coffee shop, watching Emma as she packed up her things. It was one of those rare moments when the world seemed to slow down, and David realized just how much he cared for her. Without thinking, he walked over to her. "Emma," he called softly. She looked up, surprised to see him still there. "Hey, I didn't expect you to be here this late," she said with a smile. "I was just about to head out." David hesitated for a moment before speaking again. "I've been thinking about us, about everything." Emma's heart skipped a beat, and she tried to steady her breath. "What do you mean?" she asked, unsure of where this conversation was heading. "I'm not sure what this is between us, but I feel something, Emma." "I think you feel it too," David admitted, his voice low but clear. "But I don't know if I'm ready for something more. I don't know if I can be the man you need me to be." Emma was quiet for a moment, her mind racing. She had been thinking about this too, wondering if David's feelings for her were genuine, or if it was just a passing attraction. But deep down, she knew that there was more to it than that. "David, I care about you. I care about Noah. I've never met anyone like you before. But I understand if you're not ready for this," she said, her voice soft but steady. "I'm not asking for anything right now, just to take things slow, to see where this goes." David looked at her, his gaze searching hers, as if he were trying to read her thoughts. He wanted to say so much, but words seemed to fail him. Instead, he reached out, gently taking her hand in his. It was a small gesture, but it spoke volumes. "Maybe slow is good," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "Maybe we just need to take one step at a time." Emma smiled, feeling a warmth spread through her chest at his words. She had been scared of getting hurt, but standing here with him, she realized that sometimes taking a chance was worth the risk. As they walked out of the coffee shop together, Emma couldn't help but feel a sense of hope for the future. They didn't have all the answers, and there were still so many unknowns ahead, but for the first time in a long time, she believed that they could figure it out together. Over the next few weeks, David and Emma continued to take things slow. Their connection deepened, and they began spending more time together outside of the coffee shop. David took Emma to dinner at a small Italian restaurant, where they shared stories about their lives and laughed together in a way that felt natural. They also spent time with Noah, taking him to the park and playing together as a family. Emma began to notice how much David had changed. He was no longer the distant, guarded man she had first met. He had let go of some of his walls, allowing himself to be more vulnerable with her. And it was in those moments that Emma realized just how much she had come to care for him. But even as their relationship grew stronger, David still struggled with the weight of his responsibilities. He had a business to run, a family to care for, and so much of his past was still haunting him. He wanted to be there for Emma and Noah, but there were times when the pressure of it all felt like too much. One evening, as they sat together after dinner, David looked at Emma, his face full of conflict. "I want to be the man you deserve, Emma," he said, his voice thick with frustration. "But sometimes, I feel like I'm failing. I don't know how to balance everything." Emma reached out and placed her hand over his. "David, you don't have to be perfect. You're already doing so much. You're doing the best you can, and that's all that matters." David looked at her, his heart swelling with gratitude. He didn't have all the answers, but he knew one thing for sure. He didn't want to lose her. And as they sat there, hand in hand, Emma realized that she had found something rare and beautiful, a love that wasn't perfect, but real and worth fighting for. The weeks continued to unfold with a quiet sense of anticipation hanging in the air. Emma and David had found their balance, a delicate dance of connection and hesitation, each learning how to navigate the complexities of their new relationship. Emma, who had once guarded her heart fiercely, found herself letting go, little by little. She allowed herself to dream of a future that included David, Noah, and a life full of possibilities. Yet, she could feel that David was still holding back in some ways. Though his walls had come down, there were moments when the shadows of his past would flicker in his eyes. It was the unspoken things that troubled him. His responsibilities as a CEO, his fear of being a failure as a father, and the weight of his past mistakes. One afternoon, after a particularly long day at the coffee shop, Emma was surprised to see David waiting for her outside. His expression was unreadable, his usual calm demeanor replaced with a look of deep contemplation. "Emma," he began, his voice more serious than usual. "I need to talk to you about something." Emma's heart skipped a beat. She hadn't seen him this tense in a while, and the change in his tone made her nervous. "What's wrong?" she asked, her voice soft but steady. David took a deep breath, running his fingers through his hair. "It's about the business," he started. "I've been offered a deal, a huge opportunity that could take the company to the next level. But it would mean more time away from Noah and more pressure on me. I'm not sure I can do both." Emma listened intently, her heart aching for him. She could see the conflict in his eyes, the desire to provide for his son, to build something that would secure their future, but at the cost of being there for him in the ways that mattered most. "David," she said gently, stepping closer to him, "I know this is important to you, but Noah needs you here. You can't do it all alone. You have to decide what truly matters." He looked at her, his eyes searching hers, and for the first time, Emma saw the vulnerability he had kept hidden for so long. "I don't want to lose you," he admitted, his voice cracking. "And I don't want to lose Noah. But I feel like I'm failing both of you." Emma reached out and placed a hand on his arm, offering him the comfort he so desperately needed. "You're not failing anyone, David. You're doing the best you can. We're all just trying to figure it out, and that's okay." David looked at her, his expression softening. "I want to be a better father to Noah. I want to be there for him in ways that matter, not just financially, but emotionally. But I'm afraid of making the wrong decision." Emma smiled softly, her heart swelling with affection for him. "You don't have to have all the answers right now. Just take it one step at a time, and you'll figure it out." As David took her hand, the weight of his worries seemed to lighten, if only for a moment. He realized that maybe, just maybe, it wasn't about having everything perfectly planned out. Maybe it was about being present, about showing up for the people who mattered most. The next few days were a turning point for David. He began to take a step back from the constant grind of work, realizing that he had been prioritizing success at the cost of what truly mattered, his family. He made the decision to scale back his involvement in the company, choosing instead to focus on being the father that Noah needed. Emma was there for him every step of the way, offering him a quiet kind of support that spoke louder than words ever could. As the days passed, Noah continued to make progress. He was learning new signs every day, and the proud smiles he gave Emma filled her heart with joy. David, too, began to bond with his son in ways that had once seemed impossible. They spent more time together, and the walls between them gradually came down. David would take Noah to the park, watching as his son laughed and ran around, his little hands mimicking the signs Emma had taught him. It was moments like these that made David realize just how much he had been missing. He wasn't just building a business. He was building a life with Noah and with Emma. One evening, as the sun set over the city, David and Emma sat on the porch of Emma's apartment, watching the world go by. Noah was inside, happily playing with his toys, and for the first time in a long time, David felt at peace. "I don't know where this is going, Emma," he said quietly, his voice filled with emotion. "But I know that I want to be here with you. For Noah. For everything." Emma smiled, her heart full. "I don't know where it's going either, David. But I'm willing to find out. Together." And as they sat there, side by side, Emma realized that sometimes the best things in life weren't planned or controlled. They were the unexpected moments, the small steps that led to something bigger. And she couldn't help but feel that, with David and Noah by her side, she had found exactly what she had been searching for all along. As the days passed, the bond between Emma, David, and Noah continued to grow stronger. It was a quiet sort of connection, one built on trust, patience, and understanding. Emma had started to see not just David as a man, but as a father, a man who was learning how to navigate the complexities of parenting while still carrying the weight of his responsibilities. It wasn't always easy, and David struggled at times, but each day, he showed up for his son in ways that made Emma's heart swell with admiration. Noah, for his part, was thriving. Every lesson with Emma brought him closer to a new world of communication, and the joy on his face when he made progress was priceless. He had even started making small sounds, the first glimpses of speech Emma had been hoping for, and David had been there, every step of the way, cheering him on. Emma had always believed in Noah, but seeing David's involvement, his genuine desire to be the best father he could be, filled her with hope for the future. It was clear that David was changing, not just for Noah, but for himself. One Saturday afternoon, David and Emma took Noah to the zoo. It was one of those rare days when the sun shone brightly in the sky, the air warm with the promise of spring. Emma loved moments like this, the simple joys of being outside, surrounded by nature, and watching Noah experience the world around him. As they walked through the zoo, Emma couldn't help but notice how much Noah had grown in the short time she had known him. He was still shy at times, still reserved, but he was starting to open up, sharing little moments of joy with Emma and David. David, too, had started to show a side of himself that Emma hadn't seen before, softer, more present, more engaged in the small moments of life. It was during a visit to the lion exhibit that David paused, watching Noah as he pointed excitedly at the lions, his eyes wide with fascination. David stood beside Emma, his hand brushing against hers, a simple but meaningful gesture. "I never thought I'd see him so animated," David said, his voice full of quiet wonder. Emma smiled, watching Noah's excitement. "He's a great kid, David, and he's lucky to have you." David looked at her, his expression serious. "I'm lucky to have him," he said softly. Emma's heart swelled at his words. It wasn't just the words, though. It was the way he said them, the depth of emotion behind them. David had come so far from the distant, guarded man she had first met. "And I'm lucky to have you," he added, his voice almost a whisper. Emma felt her breath catch in her throat. She had spent so long protecting herself from getting hurt, from getting too close to someone. But in that moment, with David standing beside her, she realized just how much she had come to care for him. She had never imagined that she could feel so connected to someone like this. But here they were, building something real, something meaningful. As the day continued, David and Emma spent more time together, enjoying the simple pleasure of being in each other's company. They took Noah to the playground, where they laughed and played as a family, watching Noah discover the joy of sliding down the slide for the first time. Emma noticed the way David looked at Noah, his eyes filled with love and pride, and it made her heart swell with affection for him. Later that evening, after Noah had gone to bed, David and Emma found themselves sitting on the couch in Emma's apartment, a comfortable silence hanging between them. David turned to her, his gaze thoughtful. "I've been thinking about what you said the other day," he started. "About taking things slow, about figuring it out together. I think I'm ready for that, ready to see where this goes." Emma's heart skipped a beat. She had been feeling the same way, but hearing David say it made it feel even more real. "I want that too, David," she said softly, her voice full of sincerity. "I don't know where this will lead, but I know that I'm ready to take that chance." David smiled, a genuine, heartfelt smile that made Emma's stomach flutter. "Then let's take that chance. Together." They sat in silence for a few moments, just holding each other's gaze, the weight of their shared understanding filling the room. It was a moment of clarity, a moment where they both knew, without saying a word, that this was the beginning of something new, something they both wanted. The next few weeks were filled with small moments of joy, laughter, and connection. David became more present in Noah's life, and Emma could see the transformation in him. He was no longer the distant CEO who hid behind his work. He was the father who showed up for his son, who cared for him with everything he had. As for Emma, she had become an integral part of their lives. She was no longer just the woman who helped Noah communicate. She was part of their family. The relationship between her and David continued to grow, built on a foundation of trust, respect, and shared love for Noah. It wasn't perfect, and they still had a long way to go, but in those quiet moments together, Emma knew they were on the right path. They had found something real, something worth fighting for. The days seemed to blur into weeks, each one bringing new challenges, but also moments of growth and connection for Emma, David, and Noah. Emma had become such an integral part of their lives, not just as a caregiver to Noah, but as someone who brought warmth and understanding to David's world. It was hard to believe how far they had all come, from the awkward first meeting to the quiet, loving moments they shared now. David had been more present, spending time with Noah, and even inviting Emma into the small, everyday moments that meant the most. Yet, despite the progress, David still felt a weight on his shoulders, a reminder of the life he had built before, the business he was running, and the pressure to succeed. He had taken a step back, but the balance he sought between work and family was fragile. Emma could see the strain in his eyes, even when he tried to mask it. She knew he was trying to do the right thing, trying to be the father and partner that Noah and she deserved. But she could also feel the distance creeping in when the stress of the world outside their small bubble began to overwhelm him. One evening, after Noah had gone to bed, David and Emma found themselves sitting together in the living room. The soft hum of the city outside filled the silence, and for a moment, neither of them spoke. David's fingers drummed absently on the arm of the couch, a sign that something was weighing on his mind. Emma could feel it, the tension in the air, and she couldn't ignore it any longer. "David, is everything okay?" she asked softly, her voice gentle but concerned. He didn't answer right away. Instead, he let out a deep breath and looked at her, his eyes weary. "I don't know," he said finally. "I'm trying, Emma, but I feel like I'm failing. I promised Noah I'd be there for him, but I'm torn. I can't let the business go, but I also can't keep ignoring the most important thing in my life." Emma watched him, her heart aching for him. She knew how much he wanted to be the best father he could be, how deeply he cared about Noah's future, but she also understood the pressure that came with being a single parent and a CEO. "You're not failing anyone, David," she said, her voice soft but firm. "You're doing the best you can, and that's all you can do." David looked at her, his expression filled with a mixture of frustration and gratitude. "But I don't want to just be doing the best I can," he admitted, his voice thick with emotion. "I want to be more than that. I want to be the kind of father Noah can look up to, the kind of man who shows him what it means to be strong, to be loving, to be there when it matters most." Emma reached out, placing a hand on his. "David, you already are that man. You're here. You're trying. That's more than enough." For a moment, there was silence between them, but it wasn't uncomfortable. It was the kind of silence that comes when two people are finally able to be honest with each other, when they no longer feel the need to hide behind their fears or their pride. David looked down at their intertwined hands, his thumb brushing over her fingers. "I just don't want to lose you," he said quietly. "I don't want to lose what we've built, what we're building together." Emma felt her heart swell with emotion. She had come to care for him in a way she hadn't thought possible. She had always kept her distance from people, afraid of getting hurt, but with David, everything felt different. "You won't lose me," she said softly, her voice full of sincerity. "We're in this together, and I know it's not easy, but we'll figure it out, one day at a time." David gave her a small smile, his eyes softening. "One day at a time," he repeated. As the days passed, they continued to navigate the complexities of their lives, balancing their roles as parents, partners, and individuals. David made an effort to spend more time with Noah, carving out moments in his hectic schedule to play with him, take him to the park, or just sit together in the quiet of their home. He also continued to involve Emma in their lives, valuing her presence and the support she offered him. But the pressure of the business never fully went away. There were still moments when the weight of responsibility threatened to pull him away, when the demands of being a CEO consumed him. And when those moments came, Emma could see the toll it took on him, the way he retreated into himself, the way his eyes became distant. She knew he was trying, but she also knew that he couldn't keep going like this forever. One day, as they sat together on the couch, Noah playing at their feet, Emma decided to bring up the subject again. "David," she said softly, "I know you're carrying a lot, and I want you to know that I'm here for you, no matter what." David looked at her, a flicker of relief in his eyes. "I don't want to burden you," he said quietly. "I know you've already given so much." Emma shook her head. "David, you're not a burden. I'm in this with you. You don't have to carry everything on your own." His eyes softened as he reached out to take her hand. "I don't know what I'd do without you, Emma," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "I think I'm finally starting to believe that maybe I don't have to do it all alone." Emma smiled, feeling a sense of peace settle over her. It wasn't perfect. Their lives were messy, complicated, and full of uncertainty. But in that moment, she knew that they had found something real, something worth fighting for. Together, they would figure it out. Together, they would build the family they had both always dreamed of. As the weeks passed, life seemed to settle into a comfortable routine for Emma, David, and Noah. The progress that Noah had made in his communication, the bond between David and Emma, and the balance they had begun to find between family and work, it was all starting to feel like a dream come true. However, as much as things seemed to be falling into place, the weight of the world still loomed over David. He had scaled back his hours at the company, focusing more on Noah and his relationship with Emma, but the demands of being a successful CEO never fully left him. One night, after putting Noah to bed, David sat at the kitchen table, a cup of coffee in hand, staring at the stack of papers in front of him. He had spent years building the company from the ground up, but now, as he looked at the contracts and business plans, he felt a growing sense of unease. The decision to step back from the business hadn't come easily. He still had responsibilities to his employees, his investors, and his family. But at what cost? He rubbed his eyes, trying to focus, when the sound of footsteps caught his attention. Emma walked into the room, her soft footsteps a contrast to the tension in the air. "You're still up?" she asked gently, her voice a quiet balm to the storm swirling in his mind. David didn't respond immediately. He looked at her, his gaze heavy with frustration. "I don't know how to do this, Emma," he admitted, his voice raw. "I keep thinking about the company, the deals, the people I'm responsible for. And then I think about Noah, about you, and I feel like I'm failing all of you." Emma sat down beside him, her presence comforting and steady. "You're not failing, David. You're doing the best you can. That's all anyone can ask for." She reached out, gently taking his hand in hers. "It's okay to not have it all figured out." David looked down at their hands, his thumb brushing over her fingers. "I don't want to let you down," he murmured. "I don't want to lose what we've built." Emma gave him a soft smile. "You won't. We're in this together, remember?" David nodded, his chest tight. It was in moments like these, when the weight of the world pressed down on him, that he realized just how much he had come to rely on Emma. She wasn't just someone who had helped Noah find his voice. She had helped him find his own as well. He knew he couldn't keep going down this path alone. The next day, David made a decision. He called his assistant and began restructuring his work schedule. He delegated more responsibilities to his trusted team, allowing himself the space to focus on what truly mattered. It wasn't an easy decision, and it wasn't a perfect one, but it was a step in the right direction. He wanted to be the kind of father Noah could look up to, the kind of partner Emma deserved, and the kind of man who wasn't just defined by his work. That weekend, David, Emma, and Noah spent the day at the beach. It was a rare Saturday with no work, no meetings, just the three of them. The sun was bright, the sound of the waves crashing against the shore filled the air, and for the first time in a long time, David felt completely at peace. He watched as Noah ran along the water's edge, laughing as the waves splashed against his legs. Emma stood beside him, a content smile on her face as she watched Noah with pride. "He's really come a long way," Emma said softly, her voice filled with affection for the little boy who had stolen her heart. David nodded, his eyes following Noah as he splashed in the shallow water. "I never thought I'd see him this happy," he said quietly. "I'm glad you're here to see it, too." Emma smiled, feeling her heart swell with emotion. "I'm glad, too." For a long moment, they just stood there together, watching Noah. The weight of the world didn't feel so heavy anymore. David had made the right choice. It wasn't about balancing everything perfectly. It was about being present, about showing up for the people who mattered most. That evening, as they sat together on a blanket, watching the sun set over the ocean, David turned to Emma, his expression serious. "I want you to know something," he began, his voice low but filled with sincerity. "I don't know where this is going, but I want to be a part of it. I want to be with you, Noah, and build something that's real." Emma felt her heart skip a beat. She had known this moment was coming, but hearing him say it out loud made it feel even more real. "David, I want that too," she said softly. "I'm ready for whatever comes next." Together, the moment stretched between them, the warmth of the evening sun matching the warmth in their hearts. It wasn't a perfect life, and there would be challenges ahead, but in that moment, they both knew they were exactly where they were supposed to be. They didn't have all the answers, and they might never have everything figured out, but they had each other. And for the first time, David realized that was all he really needed. The weeks that followed were filled with small, quiet changes. David had made the decision to truly prioritize his family, Noah, Emma, and the life they were building together. While there were still moments of doubt, moments where the pressures of running a business threatened to pull him away, he found himself more and more content in the little things. Noah's progress was nothing short of miraculous. The boy who once barely spoke was now signing words with ease and even attempting to speak small sentences. His smile was brighter every day, and the sound of his laughter was becoming a familiar melody in their home. Emma, ever the steady presence, continued to nurture this development, and she was in awe of Noah's resilience. She had grown so close to both David and Noah that, sometimes, she wondered how she had ever lived without them. Her heart had found a place in their world, a place where it felt like she truly belonged. One evening, after a particularly long day, David walked into the living room where Emma was sitting on the couch, flipping through a book she had been reading in her spare time. The sight of her, relaxed and content, brought a smile to his face. He had been watching Noah all day, seeing how far he had come. As he stood in the doorway, watching Emma, he realized just how much his life had changed since she had come into it. "Hey," he said softly, his voice quiet. Emma looked up from her book and smiled, her eyes lighting up when she saw him. "Hey, you," she replied, setting the book down. "How was Noah today?" David walked over and sat next to her, taking a deep breath. "He's doing great. I can see the difference every day. He's not just talking more, but he's more confident too. He's starting to trust me more. Trust us more." Emma's heart swelled with pride. She had always known that Noah had it in him, but seeing the changes firsthand was a miracle. "He's amazing," she said, her voice filled with affection. "I'm so proud of him. But I'm proud of you too, David. You've been amazing with him. The way you've stepped up, it's been beautiful to watch." David smiled at her, but there was still something in his eyes that lingered, something unresolved. "I just keep thinking, I'm trying so hard to be the man Noah needs me to be, and the man you deserve. But there are days when I feel like I'm not enough. I want to be everything to him, to you, but sometimes it feels like I'm falling short." Emma turned to him, her expression serious but gentle. "David, you're more than enough. For Noah, for me. We've built something incredible together, and we're still building it. There's no perfect way to do this. There's no manual for being the perfect father or the perfect partner. All we can do is show up and try our best. And you're doing that. Every single day." David's chest tightened at her words. He had always been so hard on himself, pushing himself to do more, to be more. But here, with Emma, he realized that maybe just being present, just showing up, was enough. He had come so far from the man he was when he first met her, the man who buried himself in his work to avoid confronting his fears, his insecurities. "I don't want to let you down," he said, his voice low. Emma reached over and took his hand, holding it firmly. "You're not letting me down," she said softly. "I'm right here with you, every step of the way. We're in this together." Her words, her touch, gave him a sense of peace he hadn't known in years. For the first time in a long time, David realized that he didn't have to do everything alone. And maybe, just maybe, he didn't have to be perfect either. "I'm lucky to have you," he whispered, his eyes locking with hers. "I don't know how I ended up with you, but I'm thankful every day." Emma smiled, her heart full. "I'm lucky to have you too," she said softly. "I never imagined my life would turn out like this, but I wouldn't change a thing." They sat there in silence for a moment, the weight of their shared understanding filling the room. It wasn't perfect, but it was real. And in that moment, that was enough. As they sat there, hands intertwined, Emma couldn't help but think of the journey they had been on together. They had faced so much, uncertainty, doubt, fear, and yet here they were, standing strong as a family. The road ahead wouldn't be easy, but Emma knew that as long as they had each other, they could face anything that came their way. David squeezed her hand, breaking her thoughts. "I think we're ready for the next step," he said, his voice steady but filled with hope. Emma turned to look at him, a smile forming on her lips. "What do you mean?" "I mean, I'm ready to take the next step with you. With us. I think it's time we talk about the future. About what comes next." Emma's heart skipped a beat. She had known this moment was coming, but hearing David say it made everything feel more real, more solid. "I'm ready for that too," she said quietly, her voice full of anticipation. "Let's figure it out together." And just like that, they both knew. Whatever the future held, They were in it together. And that was all that mattered. As the days continued to unfold, David and Emma's lives started to take a new shape. They had crossed a threshold that neither of them had anticipated, a place where their connection had deepened into something profound and undeniable. The weight of their pasts had slowly begun to lift, and for the first time in a long while, they both felt a sense of peace and certainty. David had found a balance between his responsibilities at work and his commitment to his family. He had made the choice to step back more, to let go of the constant pressure of being everywhere at once. His decision wasn't easy, but it was the right one for him, for Noah, and for Emma. It wasn't about perfection anymore. It was about presence. He still had moments of doubt, but he was learning to accept that the path forward wasn't about doing everything right. It was about doing the best he could, one day at a time. Emma, too, had grown in unexpected ways. Her connection with Noah had deepened, as had her relationship with David. There were moments when she looked at him, and she could see the man he had become, a man who wasn't afraid to open up, to be vulnerable, to love. In many ways, she had been the one who had helped him realize that being strong didn't mean being perfect. Being strong meant being there, being honest, and showing up when it mattered most. One quiet evening, after Noah had gone to bed, Emma and David found themselves sitting together in the living room. The soft hum of the city outside filled the room, and for a moment, there was nothing but the gentle sound of their breathing. Emma had always loved these moments of peace, when everything felt still and right. David, too, seemed at ease, a rarity for him. He looked over at her, his gaze thoughtful, and for the first time, there was no hint of doubt or fear in his eyes. "I've been thinking," David began, his voice steady, yet filled with emotion. "About us. About the future." Emma turned toward him, her heart beating a little faster at the tone in his voice. She had known this conversation was coming. "What about it?" she asked softly, her voice filled with anticipation. David took a deep breath, his hand gently reaching for hers. "I know we've been taking things slow, and I know we've had our doubts, our fears, but I think we've come a long way, and I'm ready. I'm ready to take the next step with you, with us." Emma's heart skipped a beat. She had dreamed of this moment, but hearing him say it out loud made it feel even more real. "David, I've been thinking the same thing," she said, her voice trembling slightly with emotion. "I want that too. I want to build a future with you, with Noah." David smiled, his eyes filled with warmth and affection. "Then let's do it. Let's figure it out together." Emma felt a surge of love and hope wash over her. They had been through so much, and yet here they were, standing on the edge of something new, something beautiful. They didn't know exactly what the future held, but they knew that as long as they had each other, they could face anything. As the weeks went by, the change in their lives became more apparent. David continued to prioritize his family, making time for Noah, for Emma, and for the moments that mattered most. The company, once the center of his world, no longer consumed him. He had learned to delegate more, to trust others with the responsibility that had once been solely his. And in doing so, he had found a new sense of freedom. Emma, too, had found her place in their world. She had come to love Noah as her own, and she had learned that the small moments, the quiet laughter, the shared glances, were the ones that truly mattered. There were still challenges ahead, moments when the weight of their responsibilities would feel heavy, but they were learning to face those moments together, hand in hand. One evening, as they sat at the kitchen table, enjoying a quiet dinner together, Noah suddenly blurted out something unexpected. "Mama," he said, his voice clear and surprising. David and Emma froze, their eyes wide. For a moment, neither of them could believe what they had just heard. Did he just say mama?" Emma asked, her voice trembling with joy. David looked at her, his face a mixture of shock and wonder. "I think he did," he said, his voice thick with emotion. The moment seemed to stretch on forever, and in that silence, Emma felt a rush of love for both of them. Noah, who had once been silent, now had his voice, and it was a symbol of everything they had overcome together. The little boy who had once struggled to communicate was now speaking, and with every word, he was growing stronger. It was a moment that they would all remember, a moment that marked not just a milestone in Noah's development, but a turning point in their family's journey. That night, as they sat together, the weight of their past struggles seemed to melt away. David, Noah, and Emma were a family in every sense of the word. They didn't have all the answers, and there would still be challenges ahead. But in that moment, they knew they had everything they needed, each other. And as the days continued to pass, they grew closer, stronger, and more united than ever before. As the months passed, David, Emma, and Noah settled into a new rhythm. Their lives had transformed in ways that neither of them had anticipated, but it was a transformation that felt right. David had taken full responsibility for his choices, and the distance he had once kept from his family was now a thing of the past. He made a commitment not just to Noah, but to Emma as well. The weight of being a CEO had lightened, and though the work was still there, he had learned to balance it with the love and attention he wanted to give to his family. It wasn't always easy, but with Emma by his side, he felt like he could handle anything. Emma, for her part, had found peace in her relationship with David and her growing connection with Noah. She had come to love them both in ways that surprised her. The small moments, watching Noah learn new words, seeing David smile at her over dinner, those little touches and shared looks, were the things that had made her fall for them. It was simple, but it was everything she had ever wanted. Noah, too, had blossomed. His speech was still a work in progress, but each day brought new signs of growth. He was more confident, more interactive, and as he began to find his voice, David and Emma could see the joy in his eyes. He was learning, and so was David, in ways they had never expected. But even as things felt right, there were still hurdles ahead. David and Emma knew that while their family was growing stronger, there were still the challenges of life to navigate. One evening, after dinner, Emma and David sat down together to talk about their future. Noah was in bed, tucked in for the night, and the house was quiet. It was one of those rare moments when the world outside seemed to pause, and they had the time to simply be with each other. "I've been thinking," David began, his voice steady but thoughtful, "about everything. About where we go from here." Emma turned to him, her heart quickening slightly. She had known that the conversation was coming, but she wasn't sure what it would entail. "What do you mean?" she asked, her voice soft, but filled with curiosity. "I mean, where do we go next?" David said, his expression serious. "We've come so far, but I don't want to stop here. I want to build something more. For Noah. For us." Emma felt her heart swell with emotion as she listened to him. It wasn't just about the house or the future they envisioned together. It was about the life they had created and the life they were continuing to build. "David," she said, her voice filled with warmth. "I want that too. I want to keep building this life with you. With Noah. I'm ready for whatever comes next." David looked at her, his eyes soft, but full of determination. "I know things haven't been easy, but with you, with Noah, I feel like we can handle anything. We've learned so much already, but I want to make sure we're always there for each other. I want us to keep growing together." Emma reached for his hand, squeezing it gently. "We will," she said. "We've already come this far. We're stronger than ever, and we'll only get stronger." For a long moment, they sat in comfortable silence, just enjoying the peace of the evening and the quiet certainty of the path they were on. There would be challenges ahead, of course. Life was never without its difficulties. But for the first time, Emma felt a deep sense of confidence in their future. They were ready. Together, they were ready to face whatever came next. The next few months brought more changes. David's business continued to grow, but he had found the balance he had been searching for. He wasn't as consumed by work as he had been before. He made more time for Noah, for Emma, and for the moments that truly mattered. Emma, too, had found a sense of fulfillment in her role in their family. She had become more than just a part of their lives. She had become the heart of their home. As for Noah, he continued to thrive. His speech improved daily, and with each new word he spoke, Emma and David shared a look of pride. One evening, David and Emma took Noah to the park. It was a beautiful, sunny day, and the air was crisp and fresh. They watched as Noah ran around, laughing, playing, and making new friends with the other children. David and Emma stood off to the side, just watching, taking in the sight of their son being so free, so happy. It was a moment that felt surreal. They had fought so hard to get to this point, and now, here they were, standing together as a family. "He's doing so well," Emma said, her voice filled with pride. David nodded, his eyes never leaving Noah. "I can't believe how far he's come. I never thought I'd see this day." Emma turned to him, a smile on her face. "You did this, David. You showed up for him. And you showed up for us. David's eyes softened as he looked at her. We did this, together. The day at the park was a turning point for David. As he watched Noah run around, laughing with the other children, he realized that he wasn't just building a future for his son. He was building a future for their family. A future where they were all there for each other. A future that wasn't about the business or the pressures of success, but about love, about being present, about being there for the moments that mattered most. As the sun began to set, they walked home together, hand in hand, feeling the warmth of the day linger with them. It wasn't just the future that was bright, it was their present. And in that moment, they knew that everything they had been through had led them to this, and there was no place they would rather be. As the seasons changed, so did the dynamics within their little family. What had started as a journey to help Noah find his voice had blossomed into a love that grew stronger with every passing day. Emma, David, and Noah had become something more than just a family. They had become a team, supporting each other through the highs and the lows. David's business was still thriving, but he had learned to manage it in a way that didn't take him away from home for long stretches. He was no longer defined by his job, but by his role as a father and partner. The balance he had sought for so long was finally becoming a reality. He had found a new purpose, one that involved more time with Noah, more time with Emma, and less time feeling pulled in 1,000 different directions. Emma had always believed in the power of small moments. She had learned to appreciate the quiet, simple joys in life, the sound of Noah's laughter, the way David's eyes softened when he looked at her, the shared glances between the three of them that spoke louder than words ever could. But as much as she had always been content with the little things, she had also realized something important. She wanted more. She wanted a future with David, one where they weren't just surviving, but truly living. One day, as they sat together on the porch, watching the sun set over the horizon, Emma turned to David, a thought forming in her mind. David, she began, her voice gentle but filled with purpose. I've been thinking about the future, about where we go from here. David looked at her, his expression curious. He had come to value the way Emma spoke her mind, how she never hesitated to share her thoughts and dreams. What are you thinking? He asked, his voice full of warmth. Emma took a deep breath, trying to put her thoughts into words. I know we've been through a lot. We've had our fair share of challenges, but look at us now. We've built something beautiful, and I think it's time for us to take the next step. Together. David's heart skipped a beat. He knew exactly what she meant. They had spent so much time focusing on Noah's progress, on building their lives, that they hadn't fully addressed what came next for them as a couple. It wasn't just about being there for Noah anymore. It was about creating something lasting for themselves too. You're right, David said softly, his voice filled with sincerity. I've been so focused on everything else, but I haven't really stopped to think about what's next for us, for our future. I want that too, Emma. I want to build a future with you. One where we're not just surviving, but thriving. Emma smiled, her heart swelling with happiness. It was exactly what she had hoped to hear. I want that too. I want us to keep growing, to keep building something solid, something we can look back on and be proud of. They sat in silence for a moment, letting the weight of the conversation settle between them. Emma could see the sincerity in David's eyes, the same sincerity that had first drawn her to him. This was the man she had come to love, a man who wasn't afraid to be vulnerable, to admit his mistakes, and to work towards something better. As the weeks passed, Emma and David's relationship continued to deepen. They made time for each other, taking small trips together, having long talks late into the night, and building the kind of foundation that could weather any storm. They also began to talk more openly about the future, discussing their hopes, their dreams, and how they could make them a reality. One evening, as they sat together at the kitchen table after dinner, Noah's laughter echoing from the other room, David turned to Emma. I think it's time, he said, his voice filled with a mix of excitement and nerves. Emma raised an eyebrow. Time for what? She asked, her heart racing with anticipation. David smiled, his eyes shining. I think it's time we take the next step. I want to make this official. I want to spend the rest of my life with you. Emma's breath caught in her throat. She had known this moment would come, but hearing him say it made her heart swell. David, are you sure? She asked, her voice trembling with emotion. David nodded, taking her hands in his. I've never been more sure of anything in my life. You and Noah, you're everything I've ever wanted. I don't want to wait any longer. I want us to build a future together, to make this our forever. Emma smiled through her tears, her heart full of love. I want that too, she whispered, her voice barely above a breath. I want us to be a family. Forever. In that moment, everything felt right. The challenges, the struggles, the sacrifices, all of it had led them to this point. They had built something together that was stronger than any obstacle they had faced. And now, they were ready to take the next step into their future. The next few months were filled with excitement and anticipation as they began to plan their future together. They discussed everything, from where they would live to how they would balance work and family, to the little details of their wedding day. They knew there would still be challenges ahead, but they also knew they could face anything as long as they had each other. As they stood hand in hand, looking at the future they would create together, Emma realized that everything she had ever wanted was right there in front of her. The life she had built with David and Noah was more than she had ever dreamed of. It was real, and it was theirs. The weeks leading up to their wedding were a whirlwind of excitement and anticipation for David, Emma, and Noah. Every detail, every plan, seemed to fall into place perfectly. Emma, who had once lived her life with uncertainty and caution, now found herself embracing a future that was clear, bright, and full of love. David, too, was ready to officially step into the future with Emma and Noah as his family. For the first time, his life wasn't defined by the weight of his business or the expectations of the world around him. It was defined by the people he loved and who loved him in return. They had decided to keep their wedding simple, a small ceremony with their closest friends and family, a day to celebrate the love that had brought them together. Noah was going to be the ring bearer, and Emma couldn't help but feel emotional as she imagined him walking down the aisle. It was hard to believe that just a year ago, he had been so reserved, so distant, unable to express himself. And now, he was thriving, his little personality shining through every day. David had been nothing short of amazing as a father. He was present in a way that Emma had never expected, always there for Noah, always patient, always loving. He was the kind of man who went out of his way to make Noah feel safe, to make him feel understood. And now, as they stood on the brink of starting their lives together as a family, Emma knew that this was everything she had ever wanted. The night before the wedding, Emma sat on the porch of their home, looking out at the sunset. The house was quiet, Noah already tucked into bed, and David had stepped out to handle some last-minute preparations. Emma was alone with her thoughts, reflecting on everything that had led them to this point. It had been a journey, filled with challenges, doubt, and growth. But it had also been a journey filled with love. She had found herself in a way she never thought possible. She had found a partner in David, someone who understood her in ways no one else ever had. And she had found a family in Noah, someone she loved with all her heart. Emma thought about the day they had first met, how awkward and uncertain it had been. She thought about the moments when they had both been hesitant, unsure of where things were headed. But now, everything was different. They had built something real. And as she sat there, watching the sun dip below the horizon, she realized that no matter what happened next, they would face it together. David returned to the porch, a warm smile on his face as he approached her. He sat beside her, taking her hand in his. And for a moment, neither of them said anything. There was nothing to say. Everything had already been said between them. "Are you nervous?" David asked softly, his voice filled with tenderness. Emma shook her head, smiling. "No," she replied, her voice steady. "I'm not nervous. I'm excited. I've never been more sure of anything in my life." David looked at her, his expression softening. "Me neither," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "I know we've been through a lot, and I know there will still be challenges ahead, but I'm ready for this. For us. For our future." Emma squeezed his hand, her heart swelling with love. "We've got this, David," she said, her voice filled with confidence. "We're building something strong, something that will last. Together." David smiled, his eyes sparkling with a mixture of love and hope. "Together," he repeated, and for the first time in a long time, Emma felt completely at peace. The road ahead wouldn't always be smooth, but they would walk it hand in hand, facing whatever came their way as a team. The morning of the wedding arrived with a sense of calm. The sun shone brightly, and there was a gentle breeze in the air. Emma stood in front of the mirror, her wedding dress flowing around her, and she couldn't help but smile. It wasn't about the dress or the decorations or even the ceremony. It was about the life she was about to build with David and Noah. It was about the love they shared, the bond they had created, and the family they were now a part of. When David saw her for the first time, standing there in her dress, his breath caught in his throat. He had always known she was beautiful, but in that moment, she took his breath away. "You look incredible," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. Emma smiled, her heart racing as she looked at him. "So do you," she replied, her voice filled with affection. They had come so far, from the hesitant moments at the coffee shop to this. From awkward silences to the quiet understanding that existed between them now. Their love had grown deeper, stronger, and more resilient with every challenge they had faced. They were ready for this, ready to begin their forever. As they stood in front of their friends and family, saying their vows, Emma couldn't help but feel overwhelmed with emotion. She had never imagined that her life would lead her here, to this moment, standing beside the man she loved, surrounded by the family they had created. Noah stood beside them, beaming with pride, and Emma knew that this was just the beginning. Their journey together had only just begun, and as she looked at David, she felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude. Gratitude for the love they had found, for the family they had built, and for the future they were about to create together. When the ceremony ended, and they walked down the aisle as husband and wife, Emma knew that no matter what challenges lay ahead, they would face them together. Because they had already overcome so much, and they had done it side by side. And that, she realized, was all they would ever need. The days after their wedding were filled with an overwhelming sense of joy and excitement, a joy that seemed to ripple through every part of their lives. The small moments that once seemed insignificant now felt more meaningful than ever. For David, every morning spent with Emma and Noah was a reminder of how far they had come. He still had his responsibilities, his business, his commitments, but for the first time, he felt like he was truly in control. He had found balance, something he had once thought impossible. Emma, too, felt a sense of peace. She had never imagined herself in a place like this, a place where love wasn't just a fleeting feeling, but a constant, steady force that held them all together. She had Noah, the boy who had stolen her heart, and David, the man who had shown her what real partnership meant. Their life wasn't perfect, but it was theirs, and it was beautiful in its simplicity. As the months passed, the rhythm of their days continued to evolve. There were moments of challenge, of course. No relationship, no family, was without its struggles. But they had learned how to face them together. When challenges came, they tackled them as a team, supporting one another through the tough times. Noah's growth was a constant source of joy and pride. He was more confident now, his vocabulary expanding each day. He spoke with a clarity that Emma had always known he was capable of, and every new word felt like a small victory. David, too, watched with awe, seeing his son come into his own in ways that had once seemed impossible. One afternoon, as they played in the backyard, Noah ran up to Emma, a big grin on his face. "Mom," he said, the words sounding so natural now. "Look, I did it." Emma smiled, her heart swelling with pride as she watched him show off his newest accomplishment. He had learned to ride a bicycle without training wheels. It was a small moment, but to Emma, it felt like a huge milestone. "You did great, buddy," she exclaimed, hugging him tightly. David watched from the sidelines, his chest full of pride. "He's growing up so fast," he said softly, his voice filled with emotion. Emma nodded, her eyes misting over with emotion. "I know. It feels like just yesterday, he couldn't even say a word. And now look at him." The moment was a reminder of how far they had come together as a family. And though there would always be challenges ahead, they had built something strong, a foundation that would support them through anything. As the days turned into weeks, the family continued to grow stronger, closer. Emma and David made time for each other, for their relationship, even as they balanced work and life. They went on dates, spent quiet evenings together, and found new ways to connect. The love they shared had only deepened, and every day with him felt like a gift. One evening, as they sat together in the living room, David turned to Emma, his expression thoughtful. "I've been thinking about something," he said. Emma looked up from the book she was reading, intrigued. "What is it?" she asked, setting the book down. "I've been thinking about the future," David said, his voice serious. We've come so far, and I want to make sure we keep building this life we've created together. I want us to keep growing, not just as individuals, but as a family. Emma's heart swelled at his words. She had always dreamed of building a life like this, a life filled with love, laughter, and stability. I want that too, she said softly, reaching for his hand. I think we're already doing it. We've built something strong, and it's only going to get better. David smiled, his eyes softening as he squeezed her hand. I know we have, but I just want to make sure we're always moving forward, together. No matter what comes, I want us to face it as a team. Emma smiled, her heart full. We will. We've been through so much already, and look at where we are now. We're stronger than ever. The next few weeks brought even more changes, all of them positive. David's business continued to thrive, but he was able to delegate more, making sure he was present for his family. He had found the balance he had once thought was impossible, and it made all the difference. Emma, too, felt a sense of fulfillment. She had always been someone who believed in the power of small moments, but now, she had a partner who shared that belief. She had a family that was growing, evolving, and thriving together. The three of them spent more time traveling, exploring new places, making memories that would last a lifetime. They went on weekend trips to the beach, spent holidays with family, and took long walks in the park, laughing and talking as they enjoyed each other's company. It was the life Emma had always dreamed of, and it was even better than she had imagined. One evening, after putting Noah to bed, David and Emma sat together on the porch, looking up at the stars. The air was cool, and the quiet of the night settled around them. I never thought I could have a life like this, Emma said softly, her voice filled with wonder. David turned to her, his eyes full of love. I never thought I'd have a family like this, he said. You and Noah, you've made my life more complete than I ever thought possible. Emma smiled, her heart full. I feel the same way, David. The two of them sat there in comfortable silence, just being with each other, taking in the beauty of the moment. They had built something extraordinary, a family, a life, a future. And they both knew that no matter what challenges lay ahead, they would face them together, hand in hand, with love guiding them every step of the way. The year passed with the kind of steady peace that Emma and David had always dreamed of. Their lives had found a rhythm, a blend of work, family, and personal time that suited them. David continued to thrive at work, but he had finally found a way to manage his responsibilities without letting it consume his life. He was more present now, more present for Noah, for Emma, and for himself. Emma had embraced her role in their family wholeheartedly, feeling a deep sense of fulfillment in the relationship she had with both David and Noah. She had come to love them not just for who they were, but for how they had changed her. The confidence she had in herself and in their family unit grew every day. They were truly a family now, in every sense of the word. But, as often happens in life, things weren't always smooth. One afternoon, Emma noticed David was more distant than usual. He was still the loving, attentive partner she had come to rely on, but there was something in his eyes that suggested he was carrying a weight. When Noah was taking his afternoon nap, Emma decided to ask him about it. David, she said softly, her voice filled with concern. Is everything okay? You seemed a little off today. David glanced at her, then down. At his hands, a clear sign that he was working through something. I'm fine, he said with a half-smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. Just a little tired. Emma didn't buy it. She knew him too well. David, you don't have to pretend. We're in this together, remember? David took a deep breath, exhaling slowly as though he were trying to summon the right words. I've been thinking a lot, he began. About the future. About everything we've built. I love our life. I love our family. But I just feel like there's something more I need to do. Something I haven't quite figured out yet. Emma sat down next to him, her hand gently resting on his. You've done so much already, David. You've built a successful business. You're an incredible father to Noah, and you've given me a life I never imagined. You've already created something amazing. You don't need to keep looking for more. David shook his head, his gaze never leaving his hands. It's not about being successful or achieving more, Emma. I just feel like I'm not fully living up to what I could be. I'm happy, yes, but there's this nagging feeling that there's something more I'm meant to do. Something that would bring more meaning to all of this. Emma listened carefully, her heart aching for him. She could see that it wasn't about dissatisfaction with their life, but a deeper yearning for purpose. "What do you think you need to do, David?" she asked gently. He paused, thinking carefully before responding. "I don't know yet, but I think it's time to take a step back. Maybe I need to reevaluate some things, figure out what really matters." Emma nodded, understanding. "Whatever it is, I'll be here. We'll figure it out together, just like we always do." David smiled at her, grateful for her unwavering support. "Thank you," he said quietly. "I don't know what I'd do without you." The following weeks were a period of reflection for David. He took some time off from the business to clear his mind, spending more time with Noah and Emma, rediscovering the simple pleasures of life. He found himself at peace in their home, in the quiet moments spent with the people he loved. Slowly, the pressure that had been weighing on him began to ease. One evening, after a family dinner, David sat down with Emma and shared the results of his reflection. "I've realized something," he said, his voice calm but filled with certainty. "I don't need to keep searching for something else. The purpose I've been looking for is already here. It's with you and Noah. Our family is everything to me, and I don't need to keep chasing after more success or more accomplishments. I just need to be present. I just need to be the man I've always wanted to be for you and for him." Emma felt a rush of relief and happiness flood her heart as she listened to him. She had always known that David had so much more to offer, but hearing him embrace the love they had built together was a moment of pure joy. "You're already everything I need, David," she said softly, her voice full of emotion. "And Noah's lucky to have you as his father. We're lucky to have you." David's face softened as he reached for her hand. "Noah and you both make me better. You've shown me what truly matters. I'm not perfect, but with you, I feel like I can be the best version of myself." As they sat together in the quiet of their home, their hearts filled with the certainty that they had found something special. The path ahead was still uncertain. Life would always bring challenges, but David had finally come to terms with what mattered most. And it wasn't the business. It wasn't the outside world. It was the love they shared, the family they had built, and the future they would continue to create together. The next morning, as the sun rose over their home, David and Emma sat down with Noah for breakfast. They had no grand plans, no lofty goals in mind, just a quiet morning, together as a family. And that was enough. It always had been. They didn't need anything more than that. They had everything they needed right there, in each other. And as Noah laughed, his voice filling the room with joy, Emma and David knew that the future, whatever it held, would be bright as long as they had each other. Months passed, and the life that Emma, David, and Noah had created continued to unfold beautifully. Their days were filled with laughter, love, and the kind of peace that comes from knowing that the foundation they had built was strong. David, who had once been weighed down by the pressure of balancing his business and his family, had found a rhythm that worked for him. His decision to scale back had been the right one, and he had embraced his role as a father and partner with a new sense of purpose. Emma, too, had flourished. She had come to feel more at home in their family, and the connection she shared with both David and Noah was more than she had ever hoped for. She had always wanted a life filled with love, and now she had that in abundance. Noah, too, had grown in ways that took everyone by surprise. His speech had continued to improve, and with every new word, every new sign, he became more confident, more expressive. The little boy who once struggled to communicate was now eager to share his thoughts and feelings. David and Emma watched with pride as Noah's personality blossomed, and each day brought a new milestone. One Saturday morning, the three of them decided to spend the day outdoors. They went to a nearby park, a place where they could let Noah run free and play, a place where the pressure of the world seemed to vanish. As they strolled along the path, Emma and David shared stories of their childhoods, laughing at the similarities and differences in their experiences. They had come so far from where they had been just a few years ago, and now they were making memories as a family, memories that would last a lifetime. Noah ran ahead, his small legs carrying him as he laughed, and called out to them. "Mom, Dad, look at me," he shouted as he climbed onto a jungle gym. Emma and David shared a proud look before following him. The sound of Noah's laughter was music to their ears. As the afternoon wore on, they found a quiet spot by the lake to sit and watch the sunset. The air was warm, the sky painted with shades of orange and pink. It was one of those rare moments when everything felt perfectly right. They sat there in peaceful silence, content in each other's company. "I'm glad we're doing this," David said softly, his voice filled with a quiet sense of gratitude. "Spending time together. Watching Noah grow. I couldn't ask for anything more." Emma smiled, her heart full. "I feel the same way. Every day with you and Noah is a gift. I'm so happy we've made this life together." They sat together, hands entwined, as the sun dipped below the horizon. It was a simple moment, but to Emma and David, it meant everything. It was a symbol of everything they had been through and everything they had achieved. Their love, their family, and the future they were building together. The weeks that followed were filled with small, everyday moments that held more meaning than any grand gesture ever could. They took more trips to the park, spent lazy afternoons at home, and continued to grow closer as a family. David and Emma had built a life together that was based on mutual respect, love, and understanding. They had worked through their challenges, and in doing so, they had become a team, stronger than they had ever been. Emma often found herself reflecting on how much she had changed over the years. She had gone from a woman who was hesitant to fully commit to love, to a woman who was deeply in love with the family she had helped create. David had taught her the value of patience, of taking the time to nurture relationships, and of being present in the moment. She had learned to embrace vulnerability, and in doing so, she had found a love that was deeper than anything she had ever imagined. David, too, had grown. He had learned to let go of the pressure to be perfect, to embrace the uncertainty of life, and to appreciate the beauty in the everyday moments. He had learned that being a good father wasn't about perfection, but about showing up, about being there for his son when it mattered most. And as for Noah, he had grown into a confident, happy child, one who was eager to take on the world, one small step at a time. The future that Emma and David had once dreamed of was no longer a distant hope. It was their reality. They had built something strong, something worth fighting for, and they knew that no matter what challenges lay ahead, they would face them together. One evening, as they sat in the living room after dinner, David turned to Emma with a thoughtful look in his eyes. "I've been thinking," he began, his voice quiet, "about our future. About what comes next." Emma turned to him, her heart skipping a beat. "What do you mean?" she asked. David took her hand, his fingers gently brushing against hers. "We've built such an amazing life together, but I want to keep growing. I want us to keep building. I don't want us to settle. I want us to continue to evolve, to keep pushing forward, to keep making this life even better." Emma smiled, her heart swelling with love. "I want that too," she said softly. "We've come so far, but I know we can keep growing, keep learning, and keep building this life together." David nodded, his eyes filled with a quiet determination. "Together," he repeated. And in that moment, Emma realized that they were exactly where they needed to be. They had found something real, something beautiful, and it was theirs to build, one day at a time. As the months continued to pass, Emma, David, and Noah found themselves growing more deeply into their roles as a family. The life they had built together felt like a dream realized, one that they had worked hard for, and one that continued to bring them happiness every day. David's business had continued to grow, but his sense of balance between work and family had become more refined. He was no longer caught in the cycle of overwork and stress that had once defined his life. Now he made sure to schedule time for what mattered most, his family. Noah, too, had continued to thrive. The boy who once had difficulty expressing himself was now full of joy and confidence. He spoke freely, laughing and joking with his parents, and showing an interest in everything around him. His personality blossomed, and with each passing day, it was clear that the love and care he had received had shaped him into a kind, thoughtful child. Emma's heart swelled with pride each time Noah said a new word or learned a new skill. She had come to love him like her own, and seeing him grow and flourish brought her an indescribable joy. And as for David, watching his son thrive and seeing the strong bond they had built only deepened his love and gratitude for the life they shared. But, as always in life, change was inevitable. One sunny afternoon, as they were enjoying a family outing at the park, David turned to Emma with a look of contemplation on his face. They had just finished playing with Noah in the open field, and the three of them were now sitting on a bench, watching the world go by. Emma noticed the look in David's eyes and asked gently, "What's on your mind?" David hesitated for a moment before speaking, his voice soft but filled with thoughtfulness. "I've been thinking about the future again. About us. About everything we've built." Emma could tell by his tone that he had something important on his mind. "What do you mean?" she asked, leaning closer to him. David took a deep breath, his gaze shifting to the horizon as if he were trying to find the right words. "I think we've come so far, and I know we've built a beautiful life together. But I want to make sure that we continue to grow, not just as individuals, but as a family. I want to keep evolving, together." Emma smiled, touched by his words. "I want that too," she said, her voice steady and filled with emotion. "I want us to keep growing, not just in our careers, but as people and as a family. We've come so far, and I want to keep building something even stronger." David smiled, reaching out to take her hand. "I'm glad we're on the same page. I've been thinking a lot about what's next, and I think it's time for us to take the next step, to push ourselves beyond what we've already accomplished." Emma nodded, understanding exactly what he meant. "What do you have in mind?" David took a moment before answering, his eyes meeting hers with a sense of determination. "I think it's time to start thinking about expanding our family. Not just in the sense of building a bigger house or having more things, but in the sense of bringing even more love into our lives. I want Noah to have a sibling, someone he can grow up with, someone who will be his companion through life. And I think we're ready for that next step." Emma's heart skipped a beat as she listened to him. The thought of expanding their family had always been a dream, but hearing David express it so openly filled her with both excitement and a touch of nervousness. "David, are you sure? I mean, we've been through so much already, and having another child would be a huge step." David nodded, his expression sincere. "I know it's a big decision, but I believe we're ready. We've built a strong foundation, and I think it's time to add to our family. We have so much love to give, and I know we can handle it together." Emma took a deep breath, considering his words. It wasn't a decision she took lightly, but the idea of giving Noah a sibling, of continuing to grow their family, felt like the next natural step in their journey. "I think you're right," she said finally, her voice filled with a mixture of excitement and a little bit of fear. "It's a big step, but we're ready. We've already faced so much together, and this would just be another chapter in our story." David smiled, his eyes shining with excitement and hope. "I'm glad we're on the same page." In the weeks that followed, Emma and David began to discuss their plans for expanding their family. They talked about the logistics, about how they would balance their growing family with their careers and other responsibilities. It wasn't an easy decision, but they both felt strongly that it was the right one. As they talked about their hopes for the future, they realized how much they had already grown and how much they were willing to continue growing together. They were ready for whatever came next, together. As the months passed, Emma and David continued to nurture the life they had built. Their love grew stronger, and they found new ways to support each other as they faced new challenges. They made more time for each other, for their relationship, and for their family. David had never been more sure of his place in the world, and Emma had never felt more at peace. They were ready for the future. They were ready for whatever came next. Together, as the decision to expand their family settled into their hearts, Emma and David began making plans with a sense of excitement that had become all too familiar. The life they had built together had given them the foundation they needed to take this next step, and they knew they were ready for the new chapter. There was something beautiful about this time in their lives, something peaceful and hopeful. They weren't rushing, but they weren't afraid either. Together, they had navigated through challenges, celebrated victories. And now, they were ready to bring another life into their home, ready to give Noah the sibling he had always dreamed of. They started by talking openly about their hopes and concerns. Emma and David spent nights sitting together, discussing their plans for a growing family and how they would manage everything. They knew it would be a challenge at times, but they were confident that with the love and care they had for each other, they could face anything. David had always been driven by a desire to provide, but now, his focus had shifted. He wasn't just working for himself or for success. He was working for his family. Every decision he made was now about building a future, one that he would share with Emma and Noah. The idea of a second child brought up some questions: how they would balance their time, how they would manage their finances, how they would find room for one more. But these were the kinds of questions that excited them rather than overwhelmed them. They were ready to take it all on, one step at a time. They even started preparing their home for the changes to come. Emma began sorting through Noah's old baby things, keeping the sentimental items, while David worked on making extra space in their home. They were excited by the idea of bringing a new life into their already full and happy world. The thought of it brought smiles to their faces and a deep sense of fulfillment. Meanwhile, Noah seemed to sense the change. He was still too young to fully understand, but his excitement was clear. He would often ask questions about the baby, touching Emma's belly with a curious look in his eyes. "Is the baby going to play with me?" he asked one day, his voice full of wonder. Emma laughed softly, kneeling down to his level. "Not yet, sweetie, but when the baby is big enough, you two will have so much fun together." Noah smiled, satisfied with the answer, and continued playing, his little imagination already racing ahead. The days passed, and the family found themselves growing even closer. As Emma's pregnancy progressed, they continued to find new ways to bond as a family. They went on weekend outings to parks, museums, and hiking trails, making memories and celebrating the journey they were on. It was a time of gratitude and anticipation. Emma couldn't help but reflect on how different her life was from the one she had once envisioned. She had been so unsure of love in the past, so cautious, and yet here she was, surrounded by it, in abundance. She had a family that loved her and a future that felt solid and full of promise. It was everything she had wanted, and more. One evening, as they sat in the living room, enjoying a quiet night after Noah had gone to bed, David turned to Emma, his face softening with a gentle smile. "You know, I never thought I could feel this at peace," he said, his voice quiet but filled with warmth. "I never imagined that I could have everything I've ever wanted, that I could be the father I've always hoped to be and the partner you deserve." Emma smiled at him, her heart swelling. "You're everything I need, David. You've been everything from the very beginning, and I'm so grateful for the way we've built our life together." The love between them was tangible, and it was in these quiet moments that they both recognized how far they had come. The journey from where they had started, from those uncertain days when they first met, seemed like a lifetime ago. They had fought through their doubts and fears, had struggled and worked through the complexities of their pasts, and now, here they were, standing strong and confident in the life they had created. Emma rested her head on David's shoulder, feeling the weight of everything they had been through. She had learned so much about herself through their relationship, about love, about what it meant to give and to receive. With David, she had learned that love wasn't just about the easy moments. It was about showing up when things were tough, about being patient, and about growing together. David placed a gentle kiss on her forehead, his hand resting on her growing belly. "I can't wait for our family to grow even more," he said softly, his voice full of emotion. "I'm ready for this new chapter. I know we can handle it, and we're going to make this little one feel just as loved as Noah." Emma closed her eyes, savoring the moment. "I know we are," she said. "Together, we can do anything." As the weeks went by, Emma's pregnancy moved forward smoothly, and every day brought them closer to the birth of their second child. The anticipation in their home grew, and they took joy in the small things, picking out baby clothes, decorating the nursery, and planning for the arrival of their new little one. The feeling of excitement and love that filled their home was palpable. David continued to balance his time between work and his family, making sure that he was there for every important moment. He cherished the time they had as a family, knowing that it was only going to get better. As the due date approached, Emma couldn't help but feel a mixture of excitement and nerves. She knew that having another child would bring challenges, but it was a challenge she was ready for. Their family was expanding, and they were expanding with it. With each passing day, they grew closer, stronger, and more connected, knowing that their love would carry them through anything. They were a family, and nothing could break the bond they had created. The days leading up to the birth of their second child were filled with anticipation and a sense of peaceful excitement. Emma and David had spent the last few months preparing for this moment, setting up the nursery, organizing baby supplies, and making sure that Noah was ready for the big change that would come with the arrival of his sibling. Noah, still young but incredibly perceptive, had been curious about what was happening. He often asked questions about the baby, and Emma was amazed by how much he seemed to understand. "When is the baby going to come out, Mom?" he asked one day, his small hand resting gently on Emma's growing belly. "Soon, buddy," she replied with a soft smile. "Soon, and then you'll be a big brother." The excitement in his voice was evident as he nodded eagerly. "I'm going to teach the baby how to play," he declared. Emma chuckled at his enthusiasm, her heart swelling with love for both of her children. In those small moments, she was reminded of just how far they had come. The days seemed to fly by, and before they knew it, the day of the birth had arrived. Emma had planned a home birth, something she felt comfortable with, surrounded by those she loved. David, always by her side, was ready to support her every step of the way. They had carefully prepared for this moment, and now it was finally here. The night before, Emma couldn't sleep. She lay in bed, her mind racing with thoughts of the baby, of the future, and of the family they were continuing to build. David, sensing her restlessness, came over and lay beside her. "You okay?" he asked gently, his hand resting on her stomach. Emma turned to him, her face illuminated by the soft glow of the bedside lamp. "I'm just nervous," she admitted. "I know everything will be fine, but it's still a big change." David kissed her forehead softly, his voice calm and reassuring. "I know, but we're ready. You've got this, Emma. We've got this. We're a team." Emma smiled at him, her heart full. She knew he was right. They had made it this far, and no matter what happened, they would face it together. The next morning, everything moved quickly. Emma's contractions had started, and she could feel the excitement building. David stayed close to her side, offering words of encouragement and helping her focus. They had decided to keep things calm and low-key, but the energy in their home was undeniable. As the morning progressed, Emma's contractions grew stronger, and soon it was time to head to the birth room they had set up. The room was warm and inviting, filled with soft lighting and familiar, comforting scents. Noah was with Emma's mother, playing happily in the next room, unaware of the intensity of the moment. Emma felt a calmness take over her. She knew this was it, the moment she had been preparing for. David held her hand tightly, his eyes filled with love and determination. "You're doing amazing," he said, his voice full of pride. With every breath, Emma could feel the strength of her body, the power of her love for the new life she was about to bring into the world. It wasn't long before the baby's arrival was imminent, and Emma, with David by her side, welcomed their child into the world. The room was filled with emotion, the love they shared for one another, and for this new addition to their family palpable in the air. Emma held their newborn in her arms, tears streaming down her face as she gazed down at the tiny, perfect little one. "You did it, Emma," David whispered, his voice thick with emotion. "We did it." They looked at their baby, a perfect blend of both of them, and in that moment, Emma felt complete. Their family was now officially growing, something she had always wanted, and something they had worked so hard for. They were a family in every sense of the word, and now they had the proof in their arms. Noah was brought in to meet his new sibling. He looked down at the baby with wide eyes, his excitement overflowing. "Hi, baby," he said with a giggle, gently touching the baby's tiny hand. Emma and David exchanged smiles, their hearts full as they watched their family grow even more connected. In the days that followed, Emma, David, and Noah adjusted to the new rhythm of life. They spent their time bonding with the new baby, and David was more present than ever, balancing his work with the demands of their growing family. Emma, though tired from the challenges of a new baby, felt a deep sense of contentment. She had always dreamed of this, and now she was living it. David had been everything she needed during the birth, and the way he cared for her and their children filled her heart with love. They had grown into something stronger than they ever could have imagined. Their family, once uncertain and filled with challenges, had become a source of strength. It wasn't perfect, it never would be, but it was theirs, and it was filled with love. As they sat together on the couch one evening, the newborn asleep in Emma's arms and Noah curled up beside David, Emma couldn't help but smile. This was everything she had ever wanted. They had worked so hard to get here, and now, with both of their children by their side, they had everything they needed. "We did it, David," she whispered, her voice soft. "We built this life, this family. It's perfect." David smiled at her, his heart full. "It is perfect," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "And it's just the beginning." They sat in silence, content, knowing that whatever came next, they would face it together as a family, united in love and in purpose. As the years passed, the life that Emma and David had built together continued to grow stronger. They had navigated the ups and downs of raising a family, balancing work and home life, and finding the peace and joy that came with building a life together. Their days were filled with laughter, with small moments of connection, and with the undeniable bond that had formed between them over the years. Noah, now older and full of energy, continued to thrive. His relationship with his little sibling, who had quickly become a cherished part of their family, blossomed with each passing day. The two of them, despite their age gap, had found ways to play together, learn from each other, and support one another in their own way. Emma and David often found themselves marveling at how quickly they had grown, both in their roles as parents and in the way they had shaped their own future. One evening, as they sat together in the living room, watching their children play, David turned to Emma with a thoughtful expression. It had been a particularly busy week, filled with work commitments, family events, and the usual routine, but tonight, everything seemed to fall into place. "You know," David said softly, "I've been thinking about how far we've come. I never imagined when we first met that we'd end up here, with this life, this family." Emma smiled, resting her head on his shoulder. "I know," she said softly, her voice filled with warmth. "It's hard to believe sometimes. But looking back, it all makes sense. All the struggles, all the challenges. We got through them because we were in this together." David nodded, squeezing her hand. "Together," he repeated, "and we've built something incredible. I think about the journey we've been on, and I'm just so grateful for everything we've accomplished, together, as a family." Emma looked at their children, who were now laughing and chasing each other around the living room. She couldn't help but feel a deep sense of pride. The love she had for David, for Noah, for their entire family, filled her heart. "This," she said, "is everything I've ever wanted. We've created something so beautiful, and I know that, no matter what happens, we will continue to build on it. We've proven that we can handle whatever comes our way." David smiled, his heart full. "We're a team," he said, his voice filled with love. "And that's what matters most. As long as we have each other, there's nothing we can't face." The room felt still for a moment, as if time had slowed, allowing them to savor the present, their family, their life, their love. They had come so far from the early days when everything felt uncertain. Now, everything was grounded in love, in trust, and in the shared understanding that they were stronger together than they had ever been apart. The days ahead were filled with promise. They didn't know what challenges life would throw their way, but they had learned the importance of facing them head-on. As a family, they knew they could handle anything, just as they always had. The future, with all its uncertainties, felt brighter than ever before. The small moments, the ones that often went unnoticed, had become the most meaningful. From the quiet mornings spent together, to the laughter-filled evenings, to the everyday acts of love and care, Emma and David had found that true happiness wasn't in the grand gestures. It was in the simplicity of being together. They had learned that love wasn't always about the perfect moment, the perfect plan. It was about showing up for each other, supporting each other, and growing together. And that, they realized, was the greatest gift of all. As the years continued to unfold, they would face new challenges, new milestones, and new adventures. But through it all, one thing remained constant: their love for each other and for the family they had built. Together, they had created something beautiful, a life full of love, laughter, and memories that would last forever. And as they looked ahead to the future, Emma and David knew that, no matter what came next, they would face it together, as a family, always united in love. And that was enough to fill their hearts with hope, with gratitude, and with the certainty that they were exactly where they were meant to be. In this heartwarming tale of family and love, we explore the life of a man who, after achieving financial success, learns that true wealth comes from love, connection, and the bond of family. As we follow his journey, we see how the millionaire's life unfolds in ways he never imagined. With a wife by his side and a son who grows and flourishes every day, this millionaire discovers that his biggest achievements are not in his career, but in the love and support he shares with those he holds dear. This is not just one of those millionaire stories about success in business, but one that shows the power of finding balance and meaning in family life. We witness the changes that come with becoming a father, as the millionaire shifts his priorities and realizes what really matters most. The journey through his life is filled with moments of joy, struggle, and triumph as he builds his family, and together, they learn the importance of being present. The story also emphasizes how important it is to work through challenges as a family, sharing in the triumphs and tough times alike. With every passing year, the millionaire's perspective changes, and what he once thought was his greatest achievement turns out to be his family's growth. Their love story is just one of many that show the real essence of millionaire stories, where the true treasures in life are not about wealth, but about building something meaningful with those you love. As the family continues to grow and evolve, they discover that no amount of money can replace the richness of love and the deep connections they share. These are the kinds of millionaire stories that remind us all that life's greatest joys are found in the simplest moments spent with the people we care about the most.